Playoffs? Playoffs? We're talking playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. That is right. Welcome, everyone, to today's edition of PHLY Union podcast. Of course, I am JP Zapata, joined as always with the lovely Renee Washington. And gentlemen, we've made it. We have finally made it. We are at Decision Day week, as this weekend, a boatload of clubs who will not know what their future will hold, but they control their destiny, and will our Philadelphia Union, who are knocking on the door on a playoff spot, which is weird to say. But Decision Day now matters more than ever, and we're going to discuss it all. We're going to preview the FC Cincinnati match as well. But Renee, how are you feeling? It's been a blue October, not the right way we thought it would be.
It's been a scary October, honestly. This has not been good. For Philly sports, we are down bad. And I wish I could say I had more optimism coming into this weekend for the Union. But here we are. We're here. Blue like the microphone right now. It's changing colors. It's hard to be optimistic right now in general within Philly sports because of just the Phillies, the Eagles, Paul George goes down. I mean, the Flyers get started. And now we have to hope that the Union don't let us down also. But JP, how are you?
Listen, I've honestly been down. I mean, it's been tough. You mentioned it all. You know, I'm watching. I'm just getting some work done yesterday, and I have the Sixers preseason on as like background noise, and then I hear them. You know, they stop play, and they're wondering what's going on with Paul George, and I go on Twitter and hyperextended knee. The Phillies, you know, were you? I mean, you've talked about that enough. I don't even to bring that up anymore. And the Eagles are just an absolute mess. Our coach is going through his Joker phase, and yeah, I know a lot of people in Philadelphia are forgetting about the Union, but I mean, this was also a team that had a lot of success over the past couple of years here in the city. And we're talking about Decision Day, and we have some stuff to definitely talk about. But no, Renee, like I'm not doing well, but I'm happy. I'm hanging out with you and hanging out with our peeps, and we're talking some soccer because at least these people bring a smile on my face.
for now at least. Let's hope that continues.
Definitely so. So like we talked about, at the half an hour mark at 1:30, we'll be blessed to have on a guest. I'll let you know in a little bit, but we'll have a Cincinnati guest to preview the match on Saturday. We obviously have a lot to talk about, including Decision Day. Not only us, but a bunch of other clubs need a lot of things to happen. So we figured we'll dive into deep with that. But Renee, let's start it off with some online discourse here. And I think it's very fascinating. And so, you know, a little bit of backstory. Yesterday, I was on Cincy Soccer Talk podcast. Shouts to our friends over at Cincinnati. And, you know, they were obviously asking about the vibe check. And, you know me, Renee, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna give it to you the way it is. And, you know, one of the hosts was like, wow, you're kind of down on the Union for a team that's, you know, it's been pretty good over the past couple of years. And I'm like, yeah, but like, dude, we touched it. Like, we tasted the championship. If it wasn't for Gareth Bale, which is crazy to even talk about out loud, but it wasn't for Gareth Bale, Renee, we would have had the hardware that we were looking for. And so, like, yes, you and I know, like, kind of like the slow downward trajectory that they've been heading on since that 2022 final. And, you know, now that the Union have an opportunity, which unfortunately was not a great year, but they still have an opportunity to make the playoffs, there's a lot of scenarios. And so a lot of the online discourse was, do the Union actually deserve this? Obviously, listen, if they take care of their business and things work in their favor, then obviously they'll be in the playoffs. And yes, they did what they had to do. But do they deserve to necessarily be in the playoffs? That's something we're going to talk about here. Now, like, my thing is, and here's a question mark that I'm going to ask everybody. Yes, it's cool going on a playoff run. But how good is this Philadelphia Union team? How good are they actually? And that's one thing, like, I have to ask myself before I start thinking about the playoffs. Because, like Renee, like, we've been in the playoffs over the last 5 years. It's not like this has been a club that's been deprived of the playoffs for 5 to 10 years. Like, we all know what that's like. We know what Subaru Park is like in October, November. Like, we don't need any reminders. But, like, do we want to go on a run here? Because, like, honestly, and it's not just the recent form. It has a lot to do with it. But I personally just don't think that this team can go on a little bit of a run. I think they can win in that playing game, but then what? You got to run into Inter Miami? We all know how that plays out. So I think this discussion is interesting, but I want to throw this out to you and to our audience. Do the Philadelphia Union deserve to make the playoffs?
It's tough. I think Listen, when it comes to the postseason, I do believe in postseason experience being valuable, and I do think that it helps bigger picture. Now, the hard part for the Union is, as you mentioned, in addition to that MLS Cup run, and yes, Jillian in the chat is saying we need a trigger warning on any Gareth Bale mentions. Yes, we do. Outside of that run, this team, when you look at their, last season, postseason, early exit to Cincy, they've had experience in the playoffs. They have just not been prepared for the playoffs. And this season looks to be no different. So I do understand the other side. Like on one side, it's good to get that playoff experience. It helps to build, especially the youth, to be able to, it's a different ball game. It's a different atmosphere. It's loud. It's stressful. There's pressure. It's hard for younger players, especially, to handle that situation of what the postseason brings. But on the other side, I do also believe in something of like, if it's over, sometimes better just kind of cut your losses and walk away and try again next year. And what could that do? Like, I guess it comes down to, is it more beneficial to get to the playoffs knowing that anything can happen? Could be a great game. Could also be a really bad one-sided game. Could get exposed. The form of the Union currently is very unknown. We don't really know what to expect in this team on any given day. So they can go to the playoffs and have a really hard-fought battle down to the wire, and you walk away from it feeling good, even if they, regardless of the result, even if they lose. Or they can go into it and get rolled over, and you're like, whoa, what was the point of even dragging things out a little bit longer? So I do see and understand the narrative and the questions people are asking. I think is legitimate, because you also don't want them to go in there into the playoffs unprepared, get destroyed, and now you feel like you're regressing and taking steps back, versus ending the season on a high note and having a rah-rah, one final hoorah before you start to look ahead to 2025. So all that to say, I have no idea. I think at the end of the day, this team has shown us that on any given day, they have potential. On any given day, they can beat an FC Cincinnati 4-2 like they did in Leagues Cup. They can go down to the wire. They can take a game to penalty kicks, but they've also shown us that things can fall apart and snowball out of control. Personally, go in. I think you just focus on FC Cincinnati, and I think this team, regardless what happens, whether they have one game left or they have a postseason run in them, this team is, the bigger picture is they need to make changes for moving forward. That we do know.
Yeah, and you do bring up some really valid points. And I know, by the way, like Jim Curtin is one of the best managers when it comes into tournament-like situations. So, yeah, you definitely have some valid points. And my issue kind of stems on a bigger picture type of notion. And that is like, Renee, every time we have these situations where we question what it is the front office is doing with this club, they always like to throw the record over the past 5 years. The amount of amount of homegrowns that we've been able to bring up. So they like to throw a bunch of different accolades. So, I mean, the way I look at this club and the squad structure, there needs to be some tinkering. Like depth, we need some help at depth. We've kind of talked about the back line, and obviously we're going to dive deeper into these positions individually as, hopefully the offseason comes sooner, but obviously as the offseason comes, we'll dive deeper into these things. But the way I envision it is if they do make the playoffs, right? That's what, 5-6 playoff appearances since 2018. Yeah. Like that, obviously on paper, that sounds great. Yes, that's awesome. That is the sign of good stuff happening. Yes. But like, it goes back to what we always keep talking about. Like, do we want to be good or do we want to be great? Like, do we want to be the Atlanta Hawks of the 2010s who make the playoffs every year and get bounced in second round? Why? Because they're not good enough to the likes of the Boston Celtics or the Miami Heat. I don't want to continue doing that. I don't think we are better than Miami, Columbus, or Cincinnati. And unfortunately, right now, maybe next year it changes, but for right now, the Eastern Conference goes through those three teams. And so, like, as much as it's cool to be in the playoffs, I get that. Like, I would prefer to miss out and that to just be a gut punch to the FO for them to kind of look at, okay, you know what? Maybe we need to tinker this just a little bit. And that's kind of where my headspace is at.
And that's a good point, too, that I didn't think about, because there are layers to this. It's not as simple as, like, I'm fed up with the team. Yeah, it's definitely an onion. It's not as simple as I'm fed up with the Union. I want their season to be over because I'm pissed off. In addition to experience on one side being a positive, it can also be a negative in that now the front office has a built-in excuse of, well, we got to the playoffs, so we don't have to blow it up. Something's working. Clearly, we got to a play-in game. versus if they don't reach the playoffs. And I know it's a good question to ask because we're kind of dealing with the same thing with the Phillies. And just heard from, they're bringing back Rob Thompson and the entire coaching staff. And they're like, we kind of failed and we kind of didn't. No, you did fail. And I think you have to be realistic of what is the expectation for the Union. Is it to just be a playoff team every season? Because they're doing that. Or is it to be a team that has potential to actually win a championship? That's not where they are right now. They don't have the depth, the talent, the ability to truly make a deep playoff run. So I think because they keep making the playoffs, last year they squeezed in. Literally, we were watching game after game, draw after draw of them still having a chance. Same thing this year. They still have a chance down to the very final game that there are 4 teams fighting for those final 2 spots, the Union being one of them. And if they win, anything is still possible. So because of that, it gives you like false hope that this team is fine. They're a playoff team. There are so many teams, Chicago, so many teams that you can look around the league that would love to be in this situation and love to be fighting for a playoff spot or love to be a team that's, right there on the cusp of being a postseason contender. So for that reason, if people are wanting, and I'm one of those people, you do want major roster evaluation and changes. Unfortunately, the playoffs actually might make that harder because it gives them that cop-out of, again, we made it to the playoffs. Again, another season. She said 5 out of the last 6 seasons. As a team that, how many playoff berths do they have prior to that stretch? So they can still look at it as improvement and progress, and we're right there, and they can say all the politically correct things. But ultimately, I still don't know, playoffs or not, if this team is going to make the changes necessary to be a better contender next year.
Yeah, and I mean, like, obviously, like, look, this is what happened this year. I mean, it was a little bit had to do with luck, right? Like, I mean, they go on that 10-game winless streak, and it's like, yeah, Andre Blake was a big part of it, but yeah, they should have won a lot of those games. So yeah, they had a lot of unfortunate and making the playoff. A lot of these players, right? A lot of these players could use a playoff run because, like, look, Uwa with an option coming up. I mean, a good playoffs, Union probably trigger that option, right? Barribo, I mean, like, I just still don't know about Barribo. What is he exactly? Like, is he the guy in Leagues Cup that was tearing it up, or is he more like the guy that we're kind of seeing now is kind of a little bit cold, or somewhere in between? Like, I just don't know. So maybe like a playoffs would be beneficial for him to give some more playing time. And like you talked about, in high pressure situations, what does he actually look like in that type of situation? Obviously, like we talked about the back line, maybe continue proving to the front office, like, hey, we're good. Like Glazes and Elliott, like, we are good. We're getting older, yes, but we still have a lot left in the tank. And so, like, there are a lot of question marks, and maybe a playoff run does help with. But at the end of the day, the way I look at this is that this team needs depth. This team kind of does need to look at themselves in the mirror because, like you talked about, I think the Phillies is a great way to kind of compare it. Like, we've been good, but we haven't been good enough to get over the hump, right? And so missing the playoffs always gives you that mindset to kind of look into the mirror.
Yeah, and that's the reality too, because it could be enough to allow the season to end on kind of a high note, which can be a good thing, can also be a bad thing, to your points about what the front office realistically needs to do to make changes for this team. If the Union are to win this game Saturday, get into the play-in, win that game, now I don't even know if there's really as much critical thoughts in terms of the front office feeling like they have to make a change versus you go out there and you are a team that doesn't make the playoffs this year. And now you can pinpoint and say, well, we weren't good enough to at least get into the play-in game. We're not good enough and we need to make some changes. But on the other side, there are guys. Ty Barribo is a great example. Quinn Sullivan, Mikel Ua, even Nate Harriel. Like, there are some guys, especially the youth, that I'd love to see what they look like in a playoff game, knowing that last year some of them weren't ready. Some of them were over their head. Let's see how they handle this challenge now. And devil's advocate, to your point about the front office making decisions, getting into a playoff game could also help open eyes of who's ready for that and who's not. If you want to be a team that's truly able to make a deep postseason run, you need to know who is the core of this team you can build around that's ready to handle those big pressure situations, the big stage of the postseason. And now you can see, okay, across the back line, you know what you're getting from Andre Blake, across the back line, in the midfield, in the forward line, position by position, who's ready and maybe who needs to be replaced or upgraded in a sense. So I could see where a playoff run can work in multiple favors. But to me, I think I'd rather them get into the playoffs as I'm like talking myself through it, get into the playoffs because I want to see that test and see who answers the call and steps up in these big moments. We did see that from the Phillies. We've been seeing that from the Eagles. Have we really seen that from the Union? You know, you've seen that across the league in the MLS, but I don't know if we've seen enough from the Union of how they handle big pressure situations, because right now, Leagues Cup, CONCACAF, let's be honest, they don't handle those situations well. Unfortunately, they've run into a number of situations where they can win hardware, they can get to the final, they fall short. So for that reason, not the worst opportunity to see, okay, it's a new opportunity, a new postseason, more pressure. Who's now ready? Who's getting closer to being ready? Because what we've seen in the past with this team, JP, we've talked about it, big moments, they do not step up. When it comes to elimination games, any sort of like run for hardware, this team has underperformed.
Always, it's just the history. It's just the history, and you know, man, it's been a rough like 2-year stretch for Philadelphia sports. We want to go through some more heartbreak with another playoffs. Oh man, I don't know, but
let's take this time to handle some business, because we do have some areas of our lives that we can count on and that we can make sure are always handled correctly, and that starts with Rite Aid. Let me tell you about our friends over at Rite Aid, because this time of season, when you're dealing with weather, you're dealing with school and fall activities and different things, you want to make sure that you're feeling good and that you are as healthy as you possibly can to protect you and your family. So over at Rite Aid today, they have a number of vaccines for you, including their flu shots. They've got COVID vaccines, they've got others as well. But with Rite Aid, they give you the ability to know that you're taking care of you and your family. They say that getting a vaccine helps minimize the chances of a life-threatening flu strand for children. So it's very important for kids to have the flu shots so they can stay healthy, and also just for you and your family, because the CDC does also recommend, in addition to the fact that it decreases it by 75% for kids, but for everyone, as your immune system's evolving, as the flu strands are changing, to keep up to date with your annual flu shots. And outside of just wanting to make sure to protect you and your family, you have the convenience of knowing over at Rite Aid, you can walk in or you can schedule an appointment online. Rite Aid has that convenience of trusted professionals on site ready to answer any questions you may have, and also ready to get you your flu shot today. So I know I love the convenience, because it gets extremely difficult trying to schedule doctor's appointments. My doctor's office is always booked out months in advance. But with Rite Aid, you now know you can walk right in, same day, get that flu shot, get any vaccine for that matter. So if you are interested in whether it's flu shots or you want to even get the cough and flu medicine, over-the-counter allergy medication, whatever it is you're looking to get, you can take care of all of that at Rite Aid. Just walk into your local Rite Aid or schedule at riteaid.com. State, age, and health restrictions to apply, and ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for more details.
I love it. I love it. And we love convenience here over at PHLY. But let's talk about something else that's really convenient, and let's be convenient with our finances and with our friends over at TrueMark Financial. Ladies and gentlemen, that is their goal, to make it very, very convenient for all of us. All right. And my favorite part about it, ladies and gentlemen, we love to earn rewards, right? We like to get some free stuff. Well, right now, with TrueMark Financial's debit card, you can earn reward points. Every time you select credit instead of debit at checkout, you'll earn credit union reward points. That's awesome, because you know why? Because those points will be adding up, and then you can redeem them for cash, travel, or retail gift cards, even merchandise, and much, much more. More importantly, all right, with TrueMark Financial, you want to make sure that you're keeping up with your credit score. It's extremely important. I know no one wants to talk about that, but you need a good credit score. If you want to buy that house, you want to buy that new car, right? You want to be styling with your new Beamer, right? Well, you need that credit score to be up. And with Savvy Money, we're able to monitor your credit score. Regularly check that credit score for financial awareness and error detection. Protect against identity theft by monitoring for unauthorized activities. Build financial stability by improving credit habits and maintaining that healthy credit score. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender. If you would like some more information, very simple. You can either visit TrueMark.com/PHLY. That is TrueMark.com/PHLY. Or if you're more old school like myself, they have 24 branches in the Philadelphia area you can absolutely walk up to. They can answer any questions you may be having. And of course, you can start your credit union career right then and there. So what are you waiting for, ladies and gentlemen? Start your credit union career here today over with the friends at TrueMark Financial. Awesome, awesome stuff. All right, well, we're talking about it, right, Renee? Decision day. Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. And like, I think this is important for the league marketing wise, right? Because like fans love this, right? They love the drama. Like, I know men like to say like, yeah, we don't like reality TV, but yes, the reason why we like sports is because we like the drama, we like the parody. All right. So decision day absolutely brings that. So obviously, like, look, guys, we know what we need to do. Okay. Obviously, we need to win and we need some help as well. But we're gonna go through some of the big big results that we do need for this upcoming Saturday. So obviously, like we talked about, for us to make the playoffs, the Union need to win, and then they need some help. They need both Montreal and DC United to lose, and obviously, we need to take care of business with FC Cincinnati. Speaking of Montreal, they'll be playing against NYCFC. All right, so. Montreal, who are in ninth place right now, if they win or draw, it will guarantee them a wild card spot. They could even qualify with the defeat depending on how we play, and Atlanta as well plays too. DC United, they'll be in action at home against Charlotte FC, who are looking for better seating. And I should say the same about NYCFC. They're looking for some better seating. DC are in eighth place in the East, and if they win or draw, that guarantees them a wild card spot. They could easily even qualify with defeat depending on how we or Atlanta finishes off. And also to keep in mind, Christian Benteke can also lock up the Golden Boots. He's had a great year for DC United. He enters the league, he enters this final match week with leading the league with 23 goals. It's been an impressive run for Christian Benteke this year. But I don't know, Renee. I don't feel too confident because you need both DC United and Montreal to kind of lose. And, like, yeah, I get it. Montreal's playing NYCFC. DC's playing Charlotte. We don't know what their mindsets are. I know, and we saw we saw a lot of these teams recently, but NYCFC, not too long ago, we saw them. They're not the hottest right now. Charlotte FC is always going to be tough because you know them. Defense. And that you can always run into some issues there. Where's your confidence level at right now? Because I do not feel too confident just based off these other matches.
Yeah, I wish that of these four teams, at least two of them, don't die over there, JP. I wish that at least have to go over Rite Aid to get you some medicine. I wish that at least two of these teams were playing each other because that would make it even more thrilling. It is unfortunate knowing that, as you were just ironing out the details, when you have DC United and Montreal already in the driver's seat with points sitting at 40 compared to the Union and Atlanta United with 37 apiece, because that means not only do you have to win, but you need help. The reality is there is the potential that all four of these teams could finish this weekend with 40 points on the season. The Union could win, Atlanta United could win, DC United, Montreal could lose. So there are so many things that could happen. And if, it does come down to it, goal differential is a tiebreaker. The Union actually had the advantage in terms of goal differential, and that's a positive. But it all comes down to the wire. I mean, ultimately, as you talk about, you need some help. And the most difficult part about all of this is the Union are facing Cincinnati. You look at who everybody has to play. The Union actually have the toughest draw of the four, by no surprise, in a really good Cincinnati team. So that makes it even more difficult that you have to win. You have to protect, as much as you can, keeping in mind goal differential. And then also knowing that the other two in Montreal and DC United essentially just have to tie or win. And one of them should be in, So it's just a lot of things that you have to keep an eye on for that four-way tie in the East. And to your point also, it's great for the league, though, knowing that you have teams that every year on decision day are in the hunt. There are some teams even still, as you mentioned, jockeying for a higher spot in terms of seeding. So that is also something when you look at like Orlando City, NYCFC, you've got teams that are right there around the same amount of points, 50 points, 52 points. They're right there neck and neck. So there are even some others that are in, but now you're competing for, what your playoff seeding is going to be. So knowing that decision day does always bring us some drama, it's by optimism, I've got none. I just am optimistically sure we're going to get chaos, we're going to get excitement, and we're going to get down to the wire, like number crunching, score watching. So I just hope the Union make things interesting. If you're
like
regardless of what the result happens, if they're going to win, but if they're not, please don't let this be a situation where you're giving up early goals and it's like over early. Please at least make it like a nice, close 1-goal game down to the wire where you're like on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen. So I am excited for this. I also feel like this could be like the end of a major era for the Union, depending on how the next week plays out, which is kind of crazy to think about. Exactly. But I'm excited for whatever happens.
You sounded like the meme just there where you're talking about the drama when I want problems. I want drama. I love it. I want
all the drama.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, like Cincinnati is playing for some stuff. So one of the things, and obviously we'll dive deeper in just a minute here, but they're on a 4-game winless streak. And as we all know, in any sport, let alone this sport, you need to go in the playoffs hot. Like, you don't want to go in the playoffs cold. You don't wind up like the Phillies, right? You'll be eliminated right away. And so like they're looking to just kind of break that streak, and also too with a win, they will qualify for CONCACAF Champions Cup spot. So as we all know, that's very important there. So Cincinnati is definitely gonna be playing for something. Oh, and by the way, Pat Noonan, the teacher, Pat Noonan, the student, Jim Curtin, the teacher. There's always gonna be that kind of dynamic with those two going forward. They love each other, obviously, but they're extremely competitive, and I'm sure they're gonna want to show out. So it is definitely going to be pretty tough, to say the least. So
also, JP, to add on to that, in addition to Cincy on a losing skid, you also look at the reality. We know what happened last time these two played in August, and the Leagues Cup 4-2 win that the Union had over Cincinnati. You think they forgot that? You think they are like, this is a team that for Pat Noonan and his squad, they're not happy with how they have been struggling to put together 90-minute games. They're dropping results. The momentum's not there going into the postseason. They know they're in, but they know that they're not ready going in. They know that they're not playing good soccer, and you get to go up against a Union team who you faced obviously they've played each other a lot, but also a team that knocked you out of Leagues Cup, that put up 4 goals on you, So I do think they're going to come with that extra hunger, because even we were a bit surprised by that win, to be honest. I think that was a major moment for the Union in that stretch, if you think back, that made us encouraged that they were kind of turning a corner. But the tables have turned, and they're right back to where they were before, where there's giving us some frustrations, to say the least. So, yeah, I definitely am a little bit nervous, a little bit excited. I want to give a shout out to PHLY Soccer, which is making me feel like a little bit identity theft. We're like the same name, similar name. As I saw it pop, I'm like, wait a minute, we don't have a PHLY Soccer page, but shout out to PHLY Soccer, who's a Union fan as well, talking about your own career. I'm nervous. I don't know, but I know we're going to get more insight from our special guest in a moment after we handle some more business, because JP, I'd love to get more thoughts on Cincinnati and what we can expect in this matchup soon.
Absolutely. So real quick, ladies and gentlemen, let's take care of some business right now. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you guys, feeling a little parched. All right. And I think it's, even if it's a Tuesday in the afternoon, it's perfect time to crack open that Coors Light, right? Obviously drink responsibly, ladies and gentlemen, but listen, this upcoming weekend, decision day, I'm not gonna lie to you, Renee got me really excited. I'm ready for decision day. And even if the Union don't take care of business, soccer, MLS soccer all day, ladies and gents. All right. So what better way to enjoy a decision day than with our friends over at Coors Light? All right. Because listen, when moments get tough, right? When you're stressed out, when you don't like the way the Union are constructed, when you get mad at the fact that the Union may miss the playoffs, it's a good time to maybe just sit back, relax, and crack open that cold Coors Light. Because when the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. They're cold. The Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for that much smoother finish. And when you embrace that chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open that Coors Light. Make the most of the times you choose to chill. And right now, Coors Light is hooking us up. You can get Coors Light delivered right to your front door. That's right. You don't have to go to the beer store. Visit CoorsLight.com/PHLY Soccer. That's CoorsLight.com/PHLY Soccer to get it delivered straight to your home with our friends over at Instacart. Make sure you guys are celebrating responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And a big shout out and a big thank you to our friends over at Coors Light.
All right. Well, as we're talking through the excitement of the upcoming weekend, I know PHLY Soccer is talking about a twisted ankle back in the day. Let's say you do have a twisted ankle, or your back's bothering you, or you're dealing with any other sort of injury. Well, with our friends over at Rothman Orthopedic, they have the professionals there to help prepare you. So whether you have joints aching, hands cramping, your back's knocked out of whack, whatever's going on, Rothman's got you. And over at Rothman Orthopedics, they've been practicing specialized care for decades, for over 50 years, guys. Their mission is that high quality. They want to give you compassionate, affordable care, and they want to get you those better outcomes. I myself have had to go to Rothman Orthopedic for my own joint issues, tendinitis, hamstring issues that I've dealt with, some other injuries over the years. And thanks to Rothman Orthopedic, they help prepare you to make sure you can get back to your everyday routine. So that way you can make sure to feel good. So with Rothman Orthopedic, they've got over 200 fellowship trained physicians. They're subspecialized in specific areas of the body with a multitude of orthopedic services: hip, knee, spine, shoulder, elbow, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Whatever it is, they've got you covered. Feet, ankles, elbows, wrists, and much more. They also have sports medicine, physical medicines, rehabilitation, orthopedic oncology, trauma, and fracture care. So whatever you need, you can trust that Rothman Orthopedic has the professionals that specialize in that area. So thankful to have had them help me in the past with physical therapy, MRIs, x-rays, anything you need around orthotics and bracing. And if you too need some help and support from Rothman Orthopedics, they're specialized in orthopedics and you. So visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and to make an appointment today.
not the
head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Oh, that's too good.
That's going to be my new, every time I talk about Rothman, I think I'm going to implement that.
I love it. All right, guys. Well, listen, it's that time of the show. It's time to look ahead. Decision day, Philadelphia Union, FC Cincinnati, the Jedi Master, the Padawan learner, who honestly is now a Jedi Master himself, as well as Pat Noonan. So we're going to look at the other side now. And, of course, we have you a special guest to look at things from the other side, the Cincinnati side. Please welcome, from Cincy Soccer Talk, he is a tactics wizard, which I can't wait to talk about. Please welcome Coach Goff. Coach, what's happening? How are we feeling?
Oh, probably similar to Philadelphia these days. Not a whole lot of optimism here in the Queen City, but I'm doing okay myself.
I forgot they got the Bengals over there right now too. It's not looking great.
Bengals, Reds, FC Cincinnati isn't even giving us joy these days.
All right, so we shouldn't feel that bad, Renee. Yeah, it could be worse.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. We're always complaining, and then you hear what other cities' fan bases are feeling, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's not so bad after all.
That is right. That is right. Well, unfortunately, when it comes to these two teams, tactics don't get too extensive, right? Especially Philadelphia, it's very straightforward. It's a diamond, tight press, compact midfield. What else are you gonna break down over there? Should be fun. But Coach, let's talk about your FC Cincinnati squad. We were just talking about them, and it's interesting because in general, like for me watching them throughout the season, like they don't feel like that 2023 squad. And obviously, go figure, it's year-to-year league. But like you guys were dominant last year, whether it be on in the back end or even in the front line with your attack. Brandon Vasquez was on an impressive run as well. What's been the main difference this year now that you're going into this decision day on a 4-game winless streak? What's going on in Cincinnati? Why not as dominant, Coach?
Yeah, you talked about getting caught up in what your own city's dealing with and forgetting that what's going around. I think internally we look and we forget that we've had a lot of turnover this season. You had stalwarts in the team, Brandon Vasquez, Junior Moreno, guys like that were Alvaro Barreal, important players last year depart the club. So you have a new cast of characters coming in and you think, but you have Lucho Acosta, you have, Obi Wobodo, these guys up the spine. We should still be good, but it's hard to change a lot of those ancillary parts and still keep the top end of the roster and those DPs and things humming along. So I think, to start the season, I predicted that they would finish probably 4th or 5th in the East because of that turnover. Then we started really well. And I got to just remember, like, oh, wait, we're actually probably right where we should be for the amount of roster turnover we've had this year.
So then that makes me curious. With this skid, are you feeling optimistic that this is who they are, or that this is just a temporary thing and a game like, I don't know, playing the Union on decision day is what's going to help them turn that corner? Because I do feel like sometimes teams get stuck in a rut, and it's hard to get out of that, especially late in the season. But I don't want the Union to be the get right game. Where do you feel like, obviously they're already in the playoffs, so that's a given. Where do you feel like they are in terms of getting out of that rut? So we can have some optimism that the Union can squeeze out a result this weekend.
Yeah, they call me coach over at Cincinnati Soccer Talk because I view everything through that lens. I have a career where I coached soccer for a long time, college and club level.
Nice.
And it was really telling to me that Pat Noonan, the head coach for FC Cincinnati, who every game has been being like, we're seeing some good thing, every game has been like, it's not good enough. They're not playing hard enough. We're coming out flat. Too many turnovers. This past game, he turned that tune to, we're seeing some good things, just not getting the result. And that to me is telling that he thinks his team has lost their swagger, has lost their confidence. Because as a coach, if you think your guys are riding too high, you try to bring them down a few pegs. If you think they're riding too low, you try to balance that out. I do think this team is in a rut. I don't have a lot of optimism heading into the playoffs because I think there's a lot wrong with this team and how they're playing. And I think that confidence is gone. But you mentioned Philadelphia being a get right game. I don't really have any illusions that's going to happen. But this team, as well as the Union, has the amount of talent to where if they all of a sudden decide, hey, you know what, we can do this. I do think that either of these teams could make a run that maybe nobody's expecting.
And we were just talking about it too. Like it's very interesting that you bring that up because we dealt with 10-game winless streak, and I think you guys beat us during that run as well, and it's tough. Like it is confidence. A lot of it is mental. Like especially the way we were losing matches during that run. It's like that's uncharacteristic for Union soccer. It is very interesting, and it's tough to break out of it. And you're heading into the playoffs. The one time you don't want to get cold is right before the playoffs, and it's definitely going to be tough. But you obviously being the coach over at Cincy Soccer Talk, and you guys are kind of going through what we've been going through over the past couple of years with success, right? And the tough challenge, right? This is what we constantly talk about. Renee and I feel like every week we talk about this stuff as well. How do you keep the momentum from the team, from the squad, from year to year? The whole notion of running it back, like this is something that we've debated and talked about over the past couple of years, because since that 2022 MLS Cup final for the Union, team has pretty much almost stayed the same. We finally had, Julian Carranza and Brujo Martinez sold in the middle of the year. But for you, like, is it important to bring back a lot of those players? Do you change it up from year to year? What's your mindset and philosophy with that, as Cincinnati's going to have to go through that for these next couple of off seasons?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what gets in a lot of people's way as fans is sentimentality, not wanting to see stalwarts of the team either drop to the bench to be, a bit player, or maybe even leave the team because it's time. But as a coach, you have to be able to take that sentimentality part out of your brain as a sporting director and say, we have to constantly be challenging ourselves to get better. And that means the players that are maybe just past their prime, really still useful players, but can you bring in a player that actually takes their starting spot and moves them into a backup role? In Cincinnati, it's a guy like Yuya Kubo. So many fans love Yuya Kubo. He's that kind of player that will play anywhere on the field, works tirelessly, has done a lot of great things. If you look at it just from a statistical perspective, he probably would be a really fantastic 12th man. A guy first sub off the bench, probably really shouldn't be starting a lot of games because he is a jack of all trades, master of none. When I look at the Union from an outsider's perspective, I see guys like Bedoya, and I think it's been really good that he's been moved to a bench role. He's still a very useful player in MLS, but if you rely on him because you always have and because the fans love him, and because he brings that Philly mentality, there are going to be games when he just doesn't have it because he is getting on up there in age. So I think it's kind of a balance of being able to chop and change a little bit of those pieces, but you have to have those stalwart players that come year to year and maintain even from the bench, a Bedoya who is in the locker room leading. And I think FC Cincinnati has lost that a bit this year with the injury of Nick Hagland, a guy nobody thinks was going to be a starter this year, but is absolutely a team leader. And by being injured, he's not even in the locker room day in and day out anymore. And I think those kinds of losses are big for a team like this.
Plus, the other factor is when you have a player that's been a starter that's now coming off the bench, it actually raises the level of your team. You bring up like an Ali Bedoya. We've been saying that even with the back line between the center backs, Jack Elliott, Jakob Glesnes, one of them looking like they need to be upgraded. It's not always about being replaced. It's also about bringing in somebody that might be younger, fresher, different personnel, different tactical ideas, and just to now raise the middle, that now some of the players that are coming off your bench are guys that could be starters if you need them to, but you're not expecting them to be 90-minute players day in and day out. So it does sound like there are some similarities also even between the injuries and just the current form that Cincinnati has, similar to the Union, which makes me curious what has led to these breakdowns, because I think for the Union, what we've run into is it's time to make some roster moves to shake things up a little bit. They're predictable. It's gotten a little bit stale. Offensively, they've been actually very consistently strong of scoring 2+ goals a game. They've been generating a lot more. They've been creating a lot more. The chemistry is there. The movements are there. It's not even on the offensive side. You still have Andre Blake in net, but defensively as a team, there are a lot of breaks down that have caused them to get caught flat and get exposed. For Cincinnati, aside from maybe needing to make some roster moves to tweak things, what has been tactically the difference that's caused them to drop these, especially the recent games, but maybe even regress overall when you look at the season?
Yeah, when I look at things, I think that when you have guys that have not played a ton together, right? So you have Corey Baird coming in fresh this year, has never hit his heights. Kevin Kelsey coming in not before preseason, so didn't have that preseason, coming in kind of mid-season. Guys coming in over the winter like Chidozie Awazium. You have guys that haven't played a lot together. You start to rely on the things you know. Well, what do you know? If you check to Lucho Acosta, he will try to combine with you. But then what do you have? Every time Lucho picks up the ball, everybody runs towards him, pointing at their feet. Yeah, give me the ball, I'll combine. And nobody stretches the field, which makes the play actually really predictable because the defense can just tighten that space and not let you play out of it. With the Philadelphia Union, sometimes I think it's a little bit of the opposite problem. It's you've played so long together, you rely on these tactical ideals that have worked for you for so long, which a lot of the time, you mentioned it, JP, is just like, hey, up tempo, pressure, win that second ball. And then when you have a guy who maybe it's late in the season, he's a little bit older, maybe he's out of form, his confidence is down, maybe he doesn't have that spring in his step to win that second ball, and that's where things break down. So you have to strike that balance of being able to rely on those tried and true tactics that your team has always played with, but also have guys to be able to be creative within that. And right now, I think both of these teams are lacking that creativity. One relying totally on the tactics that have always gotten them there, and one relying totally on the vibes that Lucho Acosta can bring if you just run towards him, and everything just kind of goes flat.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's just something that we've always talked about. And like one thing I always say too, I think is important to have tactical flexibility. And one thing that we kind of ran into as of late, but this has been a problem with the Union for the past 6 years, is when teams park the bus. And it can be frustrating, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't score a goal on a team who does park the bus. And sometimes I love our physical nature, right? Like the way we play, it's very reminiscent to how Philadelphians like to watch their sports, right? Very physical, defensive oriented, and that's great and all. But sometimes you do need to possess the ball. Sometimes you do need to build from the back and bring up. And there was a run where, it was working out well, but it can't just be on one side. It has to be on both sides, even going down the center of the pitch as well. And so these are things that we constantly keep talking about and bringing up, just having some type of tactical flexibility. I always tell Renee about 2019, I know, it wasn't crazy tactic change, but 70th minute, the defense is tired. Who do you bring in? ALLCITY. And here comes ALLCITY, takes on 1v1s, even takes on 2 defenders at times, and it created opportunities. And so no, we don't need to get another ALLCITY, but I do think some tactical flexibility would really help out this Philadelphia Union team. So it'd be interesting. Coach, Brandon Vasquez, I brought up earlier, big loss for you guys. You kind of touched upon it, but like he has been a big loss for you guys. The amount of goals he scored. I mean, Luciano Costa, obviously, you got a game plan for that. But back last year, it was also Lucho and Brandon Vasquez, and that's really tough to kind of defend against. What have you guys been doing to kind of replace him? And I guess, like, what is going to be the plan going forward? Because it seems like you guys haven't been able to replace him.
Yeah. So one of the big things that made Brandon Vasquez work so well within the system with Lucho was his movement was fantastic. Unbelievable movement in and around the box. Same with Julian Carranza. You guys are really familiar with this. A guy that knows how to peel off of the backside of those defenders, make those little darting runs in behind, like really good movement in and around the box that then frees up space where even when they're not scoring, it allows a guy like Daniel Gazdag to make a late run into the box and have that free space to score because Carranza has made such an intelligent run to the near post or whatever. We don't have that right now. We have guys who move really well but can't score at all, like Nico Gioacchini, who we brought in the winter, Corey Baird. Their finishing has just been non-existent. The movement's really good. And then we have a guy in Kevin Kelsey who is a really good finisher when he can get shots away, but his movement is almost non-existent. He's a big body. He just kind of still wants to hang out there, check to the ball, combine a little bit, but none of those selfless runs to create space for others. So FC Cincinnati has been relying almost entirely over this back half of the season on players like Luca Orishano, who plays mostly as a wingback for us, to create magic out of nothing, long distance shots, set pieces, very little of the kind of combination play that allowed Vasquez to score so many goals. And I think it's because of that movement. So for FC Cincinnati right now, it feels an awful lot like if you can shut down Lucho Acosta and not let him create out of nothing, then the only way they're going to beat you is if a guy like Luca Orishano steps up and hits a 70-yard goal or, a 30-yard banger from a free kick.
So what you're basically telling me is you guys are us. Yeah. It's like the Spider-Man meme.
Literally.
Like, wait a minute, are you us? Because that is, well, old us, I should say. That's not the Union's offensive identity anymore. We have evolved from that. The Union have absolutely been much better, complete opposite of what you're saying, of getting opportunities in the run of play. It's the combination play. Sometimes it is still leaning and relying on set pieces and flank services, but it's been a lot more of a team build-up, possession-oriented style where they're breaking down opponents' back lines, getting numbers forward versus going with just one or two. So unfortunately, I empathize a lot with where you are because it wasn't too long ago we were complaining about the Union's offense having the same struggles, the inability to create, the inability to be dynamic, and it being very predictable. But now it's been a lot more interchanging. And so for the Union, it's been on the defensive side. It seems like for Cincinnati, it's been a little sprinkle of everything, but especially offensively, because we know in this league, if you're not generating, you're defending. If you're giving the ball away, you're forcing shots from distance, you're forcing build-up out of the back that's not on. You don't have the numbers. You don't have the attackers that can hold balls up and sustain possession higher up the field. You're defending. And that's not a great recipe for success. So my last question for you is, given the nature of where both these teams are, what do you predict is the keys to this game for this matchup? For obviously the Union have to win. Decision day, if they don't win, there's no way they get in. If they win, they still might not get in, but they need to win. Whereas for Cincinnati, you're in the playoffs, but Cincinnati also knows they need to get back on track to be prepared for a good postseason run. So what are your keys for this matchup between the Union and Cincinnati?
To me, I really feel like the game is going to be won or lost for both teams on the Philadelphia right-hand side, the FC Cincinnati left. If you have a guy like Quinn Sullivan working tirelessly up and down that flank, as well as coming into the midfield to help create against whatever FC Cincinnati throws out there at wingback, which has been typically either Luca Orishano or Yamil Assad, both of whom are not defenders at all, who really just want to play offense. And then Ian Murphy at left center back, or Teenage Hidebe, who we brought in, who really hasn't settled yet. So if Quinn Sullivan can continually get penetration down that right-hand side and put a Hidebe or a Murphy into 1v1 situations, I think that the Union are going to have a lot of joy. I think on the other side of that, if FC Cincinnati can push Sullivan back into a more defensive role back there on the right and pin him back a little bit, and have Yamil Assad or Luca Orishano be able to even come into the midfield and pull him deeper into that defensive midfield sort of role that sometimes those shuttlers can accidentally fall into if they're following those flank players, then I think it'll be hard for Philly to even get out of their own end without hitting long balls. And FC Cincinnati, for all of their defensive frailties this year, which have not been a ton, but one that is definitely not there, is, you know, winning those long balls. They didn't generally do a pretty good job on the first long ball there. So maybe, I don't know if this is good or bad for Philadelphia, but your hopes maybe hang on the balance of Quinn Sullivan.
Wow, Quinny boy. Oh, I mean, at least he didn't say Kevin. So
yeah,
because we're kind of, you know, cabined out over here with that story. But last but not least, Coach, you know, we got to ask you, what's your prediction? What do you see happening this Saturday? Union Cincinnati in Chester, Pennsylvania. What's going to happen, Coach?
I think it's a really tough one, but I actually think there are going to be goals in this match. FC Cincinnati, Chidozie Awaziam, if he plays at all, it's going to be his first game back from a hamstring injury, so I think he probably won't play. Miles Robinson will be coming back from a long international break, even if he doesn't get minutes in tonight's game, you know, the flight and the travel. So I think there will be goals there for the Union. The Union hasn't really had a Union style of defense this season, as you all know. So I think, if I am being honest, I'm going to pick a 2-2 draw. And if I'm being extremely hopeful, I think maybe, you know, Lucho Acosta pulls some magic out at the end and gives FC Cincinnati a 3-2 win.
Real quick before we let you go, I know Miles Robinson was dealing with injury earlier this year, but how's he been overall this year?
I think he's been understatedly good. And I say that because if you actually look at his defensive metrics, stats and things, he's been really good. He's had a couple of high profile mistakes. So fans here are kind of down on him. And he's had to flip a lot back and forth between playing right center back and center back, which is, it's not a huge difference, but it makes a difference in terms of your mentality of playing that same position day in and day out. So I've been pretty happy with Miles. I think if he could play in a stable back line where the other players around him are pretty much the same game in and game out, I think he'd be a lot better, but I would give him maybe a B+ for the season. For sure. Well, Coach, where can people find you? You can find me on any of the socials at FC Cincy Tac Talk. And then if you just, you know, want to hear what's going on your sister team over here in Cincinnati, Justin Hoyt, former Arsenal player Justin Hoyt, and I do a podcast every week called Talking Tactics with Coach Goff, where after this match, we'll break down all the goals, talk about the big tactical ideas for both teams. So you can check that out as well. Well, listen, you don't want to miss that one. It's always a pleasure talking to you. You have some amazing insight. So we look forward to maybe in the playoffs, but if not, we'll talk to you next year. Would love that. Thank you. Thanks, Coach. That was great. Coach Goff, awesome. Renee, that was some great insight that he brought to us.
Yes, definitely. It's eye-opening because it's not only the Union that have dealt with some of the issues of needing to change up the roster, running it back too much, the offense being stale and predictable. Injuries, of course, everybody's dealing with injuries. And even his score prediction of a 2-2 draw, but hope for a 3-2 Cincy win. What is your score prediction, JP? What you got?
Oh, man. I do feel like it'll be a draw, honestly. And that obviously won't bode well for our playoff picture, but I have a 1-1 draw for the Union. I don't see them. And listen, we talked about it. Cincinnati's obviously going through their own issues. And it's funny because we were bringing up Luciano Costa. It's been like the first match, like he killed us, right? He got the game winner. You noticed him. The second match, we really did a good job of slowing him down. I think El Brujo was still part of the club at that point. But he didn't really kill us at that point. So what's Luciano Costa going to do this Saturday? What's he really going to give us? And like, you know, coaches talked about, things do seem a little bit stale over Cincinnati. And when your attack only goes through one player, it could be easy to stop. I mean, we've dealt with that with Daniel Gazdak, right? So, you know, it is definitely going to be interesting. We got Josh Sass. What's going on? Says poor Union don't get the Philly love they should. One of the reliable teams in the city. Yeah, Josh. Pretty reliable usually. Usually.
They're not above the Philly sports issues and the Philly sports luck, I should say. They have been reliable in the past, but I think they're more consistent. I don't know that reliable is a term I use for them anymore because they are also equally as frustrating as every other team in the city. They definitely don't get the love they should. I will give that. I agree with that Josh is mentioning. But reliable, I feel like they've become just more consistent in knowing they're always going to be that middle of the pack team. They're not too high, not too low, right? You know that they're going to be in a playoff battle. They're going to be a team that can win you games. Yes, agreed, Josh. Consistent is definitely there. They are consistently a right on the nose playoff team, hard fought games, exciting to watch, give you some thrillers, give you some frustrating gray hairs as well, which is why when I look at this game this weekend, decision day, must win for the playoffs at home against a Cincinnati team that's on a 4-game losing streak, but also a team that is struggling between injuries. And as coaches even out, sharing and outlining with us, their offense hasn't been producing. That makes me excited because the Union have been struggling defensively and offensively have been generating a lot of chances, scoring goals, getting corner kicks, crosses, final third entries. So I want to be optimistic and saying like a 2-1 Union win. But what also kind of makes me nervous, and this is the reality that we've seen all season, back to that consistency, the Union do consistently have whatever issues of every team. I remember Orlando City saying this. I can count on several hands, not fingers, hands, where an opponent was struggling offensively. And against the Union, everything opened up. Suddenly their offense clicked. So that makes me very nervous hearing that the Cincinnati tactical look has been more set pieces, wide services, knock it forward. But I'm still going to try to go 2-1 Union.
2-1.
And now if they get in the playoffs, I don't know because I don't know what the other teams are going to do. I don't have predictions on them. But I think the Union could squeeze out a 2-1 win down to the wire, an exciting final home finale of the 2024 season. Possibly then get disappointed and not make the playoffs anyways, but I think this should be a game that might line up for them.
It'll be interesting because obviously, look, they're not on the hottest run right now, right? Like they're honestly, the Union themselves are they're on a 3-game winless streak themselves. They haven't won since that DC United match back on the 22nd of September. And like, I want to believe that they'll show up because, like, look, right, Saturday is a playoff match. Like, you have to win. And if you win and other things happen, then you're in the big dance, right? So like it is going to be a playoff. It's going to be playoff atmosphere. I know the fan base is going to be wild because they definitely probably want the playoffs as well. So like I'm hoping because typically they do show up in a playoff like situation, and when there's a matter of elimination, they typically come out and they play very intense and very physical. So I want to hope that. But, on the other side, Cincinnati, they don't want to go into the playoffs cold like we talked about. They want to get the dub. They want to qualify for Champions Cup, which we didn't talk about with Coach, but that's something that they're also looking at as well. So it is going to be interesting. And obviously, too, like the one thing I hate about this weekend, it's that it's against Pat Noonan. Pat Noonan knows us so well. This dude was here for 5-6 years. Like he knows the Philadelphia Union better than any manager in this league, obviously besides Jim Curran. But like that's what stresses me out is that it's that team, that club that's been giving us problems since Pat Noonan went over there. So it is definitely going to be interesting. Josh gave us a big, strong dupe.
Yeah, I want to feel optimistic. Backs against the wall, nothing to lose. I'm sorry, a lot to lose, but in reality, you can at home at least get yourself closer to being a playoff team, and then you see where it just fall from there. So I'm excited because at least the Union had this opportunity down the stretch to the chance to see if they can pull this out.
Yeah, absolutely. We shall see about that. Real quick before we sign off, obviously we had international break. I do believe, obviously, Gazdak and Paribo got called up by the respected nations. Andre Blake obviously got his cap for Jamaica. And then the big one, though, Renee, our boy, Danley Jean-Jacques got himself a goal for Haiti as they beat Aruba 5-3 yesterday, which was pretty cool to see. as far as international break goes. But guys, that's going to do it for this edition of PHLY Union Podcast. Thank you for everyone for tuning on in. Thank you for Coach for coming on in from Cincy Soccer Talk. Great insight there. For Renee Washington, of course, I am JP Zapata. Union, please make it in the playoffs. We'll talk to you guys next week.
We all silly like the mayor.